guys, welcome back to my channel. As I mentioned last week, from time to time, whenever I have an opportunity to travel to another marketplace, I am going to be featuring what I believe are some highlight points in case you've been considering relocating. Maybe you can suddenly work remotely at your job and you're thinking, wow, this is an opportunity where I want to move around the country. Then if that sounds like you, this video is going to be perfect for you. So stay tuned for my interview with Andrea St, Germaine, who is a real estate agent in New Orleans and Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Am I awake or am I dreaming? Hey everybody, today I have a special guest, Miss Andrea St. Germaine. I said your name right?
You did.
Out from Darrow, Louisiana, which is between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, right? I'm excited to have you on today, and thank you for making time. So, and by the way, I love your earrings. I've been meaning to say that since we were talking earlier.
Thank you.
Yeah, great color.
Thank you.
As I was telling you before, I was in New Orleans briefly for my mom's birthday. We went to Mardi Gras, and I was really interested to see the difference in the structure of homes and, from the French Quarter. And then I started wondering about the real estate market, which is how we got in touch. So I'm just curious, what is it like for you as a local within Louisiana? What do you like about living in the area?
Well, I grew up here. I was born here. I've been here all my life. I just think we have such a unique state in terms of like the culture, which, typically people think of Cajun culture when they think of Louisiana. Of course, they think of Mardi Gras and they think of New Orleans, which is two totally different things.
Right.
So to me, New Orleans is like a culture all its own. So it's made up of a lot of like different, to me, diverse cultures, like, and the way New Orleans was built, from way back, years ago when people migrated here. You had Irish people, you had Italians, you had Creoles, you had Africans, and like all of that eventually blended together into what to me is New Orleans today. And it's like its own unique culture. And then there's like another part of the state that is, what you would call Cajun culture, like the Acadianas and all that area. I guess as you get further north, you maybe lose a little bit of that, but there's still unique things there because of course we're called Sportsman's Paradise. So there's a ton of things to do here outdoors. We have a ton of waterways, whether it's, the bayou, the Mississippi River, we've got tons of lakes. So there's a lot of stuff you can do like on the water, boating, fishing, hunting. Of course, hunting is a huge thing here. Yeah, I think it's a really neat state and really diverse, and not just in real estate, but just, in what we have to offer in general. A lot of cool things.
For sure. I mean, I was only there for a few short days, and now I want to go back after you said all that fun stuff. Because I pretty much spent my whole time within the French Quarter, which is like the tourist destination. I mean, it's cool. However, I got the feeling that it's mostly, again, tourists, right? And
so we get about, New Orleans area gets about 18 million. And I haven't checked it since COVID. Like, I don't know what those numbers look like since the whole pandemic, but historically somewhere, I think around 17 to 18 million visitors a year.
Wow.
Just to the New Orleans area. So it is a huge tourist destination. There's so much to do in New Orleans all year round. It's not just Mardi Gras, which is what people think of. There's like over 100 festivals that go on every year in New Orleans.
Wow. Okay.
Which again, with the pandemic, some of that was interrupted, but Jazz Fest is huge. Of course, Mardi Gras. You've got Voodoo Fest that happens, I believe, around the end of October, close to Halloween. Tales of the Cocktail. Have you heard of that one?
No, what's that?
So I think it was kind of like this walking bar tour at one time. And then like, I guess it gained some interest from people outside of the city. And then like different people started coming in from other states, people that were in the bar space, I guess, hospitality, but specifically alcohol. So Tales of the Cocktail is a huge festival for people in the liquor industry.
Wow.
So bartenders come in, restaurant owners, of course, regular tourists, but I think it lasts a whole week, and they have like drink mixing contests, and
wow,
it's just a big party. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
the first time I heard about it, I was coming back from California and I got on a flight and all of the people on the flight were coming into New Orleans to go to Tales of the Cocktail. So it was a interesting flight to say the least.
Wow. Now I'm curious, in where you live in Darrow, do you guys get many people from out of state, or would you say it's mostly families that have stayed for generations? How does that work?
In the community that I'm in,
Right, right.
I'm situated between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. I'm at the probably the very bottom point of Ascension Parish, which is,
Mhm.
between the two. So for me to get to downtown Baton Rouge is about 40 minutes, maybe a little more, 45, depending on traffic. And
Mhm.
to get to downtown New Orleans or the French Quarter takes me about an hour. I would say it definitely is more family oriented. There's a lot of neighborhoods. My neighborhood has about 300 houses. They're building a new neighborhood called Riverton just up Highway 22,
Mhm.
which I live off of Highway 22. That's going to have 900. We've got Pelican Point, just a short drive around the corner. I'm thinking there's over 1,000 houses in Pelican Point. We have like probably 7 or 8 neighborhoods all within a 2-mile stretch of road. And I think the attraction here for the parish that I live in is schools.
Mhm.
We have good schools.
I'm because I don't know a lot about Baton Rouge other than I think
Mhm.
it's a really pretty name. And I'm guessing Baton Rouge and New Orleans, my feeling is New Orleans is a bigger city. Is that pretty accurate?
I should know this, but I don't. I think we're close to 500,000 in Greater Baton Rouge,
Mhm.
and New Orleans is probably a little bit better than that. But I think Greater New Orleans pre-Katrina was around 1.2 million people.
And speaking of Katrina, so I got the feeling that hurricanes are very common, like maybe at least once a year, or how does it work? Like ones that we don't really hear about. I guess maybe there are some that don't quite make the news as big as like Katrina did.
Well, so most of the time, any hurricane, a true hurricane that gets that hurricane status,
Mhm.
does make the news. But
Mm,
we do get tropical storms here,
mhm.
and we get a lot of just weather events. It rains here a lot. Probably maybe not as much as you guys get up there, but
Seattle's known for
we
that, yeah.
yeah, for the rain.
Mhm.
But it rains a lot here, but we do. And so hurricane season starts in, I think, either June or July, and it runs till almost November, maybe the end of November. But you can get a hurricane anytime. You actually can get a hurricane any time of the year. And we don't get like a really intense hurricane every year,
Mhm.
but some years we get more than one.
I mean, that's a little bit like South Florida. We would have that. I want to say the hurricanes would make the news. However, the one that really came to mind was Hurricane Irma, and that's during my time in Florida. And so, yeah, there was a lot of fear surrounding that. However, it sounds like it could potentially be just kind of like a part of normal life, and you just need to know how to prepare and be safe, right? And it's not nothing to worry about per se all the time. Is that right?
Well, I don't think people like live in constant fear of a hurricane.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a part of life. I mean, if you live in Louisiana or really anywhere along the southern Gulf Coast,
Mhm.
and even the East Coast, you're going to get a hurricane at some
Right.
point. But the good thing is you do have warning. So, you can get out, you can leave. I mean, people always have the option to leave, and sometimes they do mandatory evacuations
Mhm.
and where you have to get out. But that depends on the intensity of the storm, where it's going to hit. A lot of different factors go into them, deciding that they need to send people out of the city or whatever town is in the, what do you call it, the bullseye on it.
Ah,
Yeah.
the
For
terrifying
that,
bullseye.
huh?
It's terrifying to see that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Now, in your area, would you say it's quite common for homeowners to get flood insurance? Because that was a thing in South Florida, depending on the areas. Now,
Yeah.
I'm curious if that, yeah, so it's pretty standard, it sounds like.
So a lot of our area in New Orleans, Ascension Parish, where I live, Baton Rouge, a lot of those areas do require flood insurance. So we're in flood zone AE, which is the worst designation, other than being right on the coast, of
Mhm.
course. So yeah, it's required, of course, if you have a mortgage. But a lot of people here
Mhm.
opt voluntarily to have flood insurance, even if it's not required,
I see.
because the flooding is such a prevalent thing. We had a massive flood here in 2016,
Mm-hmm.
not related to a hurricane. Areas that had never flooded, and then we had another, I think in May of 2021, this year, we had another flood that came through Baton Rouge area and Ascension. And there were areas that didn't flood before that flooded. So people kind of expect it, you always plan for the worst, but hope for the best. So planning for that is having flood insurance.
So what else do you like to, about the area that you like in Baton Rouge, let's say?
I guess I've spent more time there, like growing up, the Baton Rouge area, than I did in New Orleans. I've spent more time in New Orleans as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, the little tiny town I grew up in, going to Baton Rouge was like going to New York City for somewhat, for
Right.
somebody else. There's always been a lot of cool things to do in Baton Rouge. Of course, there's great shopping. We have so many good restaurants here. There was always festivals. When we were little, we would go to the downtown area. They do a big fireworks display on the Mississippi River every year, which is a lot of fun. And people just bring their blankets and things and lay them out on the levee, and they bring ice chests, and it's just, it's just a good time. Of course, we have LSU Tigers. So if you live here, you're almost undoubtedly an LSU fan. Of course, you've got tailgating like you do at any other big university, but
Right.
that's kind of a way of life here. Everybody's a big Tiger fan. Of course,
Mm.
we have all the cool things that people think of when they think of Louisiana, like crawfish boils and, festivals and the Cajun music and, all that sort of stuff. So there's always activities and things to do circled around that.
Right. So it seems like it's a chef's paradise, or like if you like to cook, Louisiana is a great spot for you, or specifically Baton Rouge and New Orleans because of all the cuisine. It sounds like it's a foodie's haven.
Yeah,
Right.
it is. We have a lot of really, really good restaurants, but it's really kind of neat because it's not just, of course, Cajun food. To me, it was always the norm. We grew up that way. That was how we ate. We cooked Cajun. I am Cajun. I come from a Cajun family.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of the norm, but it took off and got really big. I don't know if it was Emeril Lagasse that,
Right.
made Cajun food kind of, I guess not. I guess if I think about it, there's some that came before him that helped, I guess, increase the popularity of Cajun food. But there's a lot of other chefs and restaurateurs, if you will, that have come into our area. So you can find all sorts of food here, whether it's food from, like Mexican food or Chinese or Japanese food. We have, and oh my gosh, barbecue is popular here. We have all kinds of good barbecue.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one thing that I noticed as I was leaving was I've never been so full. It's just like I actually did a walking food tour. I don't know if you agree with this. The tour guide was telling me that apparently the difference between Creole and Cajun cuisine is Cajun typically will be colored brown based on all the seasonings and spices. And Creole food is typically cream based, and you'll have like garnishing and things like that. It's a little bit more, they have more presentation. Was that true?
I guess that depends on who
Yeah.
you talk to.
I see. Okay.
Now, the way I think of it and the way I've heard some people explain it is Cajun food is more brown. So that is true. There's more stews and things like that, where Creole is more red. So a lot of tomato-based things. But like gumbo, for example, if you think about like a Cajun gumbo, it might have a roux in it and it might be more brown. It might be a little bit thicker. And a Creole gumbo will be more like a soup. And it might have tomatoes in it and okra. There definitely are some differences between Cajun and Creole. But I think what they are depends on who you ask. Everybody's got a different opinion.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, and I got to try alligator nachos over in
Oh,
the
really?
border, which was actually really nice. It tasted kind of like fried chicken. I would have never guessed. And I was pleased to see how tasty it was. And so however, I don't know if the locals eat like that or if it's just like a touristy thing to eat alligator.
Oh no, local
Yeah.
people eat that.
All
Yeah.
the time then. Okay. So it's like
Yeah.
having chicken. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and so anytime someone's trying to encourage a tourist, if you will, or someone who isn't familiar with the food down here to eat
Right.
frog legs or alligator or anything like that, it always tastes like chicken. So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
And speaking of the French Quarter, which, we talked briefly about, you mentioned to me earlier some of the history with the architecture, right? I mean, some of those homes I was noticing have been featured in films like Benjamin Button. I walked by that home, really
Yeah.
gorgeous mansions. I'm curious, do all homes look like that outside of French Quarter, or is that just really unique to French Quarter?
I definitely think the architecture in the French Quarter is unique
Mm-hmm.
to the French Quarter for the most part. Now, you won't come to Baton Rouge, I don't think, and see like the Greek revival, the bigger monstrosities, if you will, that you see down in the quarter and even in other parts of New Orleans, like over in Algiers Point,
Mm-hmm.
or just even migrating out from the French Quarter into other parts of the city. You'll see, those big houses. But some of the other styles, like the shotgun houses, for example, which is one of my personal favorites. I grew up in a shotgun house. So
What's a
which
shotgun house?
so it's a house that it's a long and narrow house
Mm-hmm.
where if you shot a bullet through the front door, it would go straight out the back door.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like the house I grew up in when I was little, you
Mhm.
walked in the front door and you were in the living area, and then you walked into the next section and it was like the bedrooms, and then the next section was
Mm.
like the kitchen, bathroom, kind of dining, but it was segregated that way. But you could walk straight through the whole house, and it wasn't a hallway.
Ah.
you know and that's actually had an influence on some of the architecture that we're seeing today, modern architecture. So we have neighborhoods where they're building like really modern brick houses, but they're built on that shotgun style, which
Hmm.
is kind of cool. And they'll integrate some of the features like that you see in New Orleans architecture into the houses, so that's kind of
Hmm.
cool. And there's another name for a shotgun house. So if you have a shotgun house and you built like a second story to the back, it's
Mhm.
called a camelback. So, and they used to do that when they needed not extra storage, but when they needed extra living space,
Right.
they would build a second story to the back of the house. And so that was called a camelback. But then they started building them that way intentionally, not adding that on. That
Hmm.
was just part of the way the house was built. New Orleans has such a mishmash of all kinds of architectural styles,
Right.
of course, because they had influence from like those same groups that I mentioned earlier. You have Spanish influence, French influence, Italian influence, Irish influence, of course, African influence. So there was just a whole slew of different types of structures being built. Of course, we have outside of New Orleans and all over the state, not just Baton Rouge or New Orleans, the antebellum homes here. The antebellum homes, they were generally like large landowners and like the affluent and the wealthy. It's these big stately mansions,
Hmm.
and they're huge. Like some of them are 2 and 3 stories. They have many, many rooms. Multiple families would live in one residence.
Hmm.
And then they had lots and lots of land. They farmed, maybe they farmed, cotton or sugarcane or something like that.
Mhm.
Most of those, a lot of the land has been sold off, and like now you can go and tour them. So you can take a tour here, like along the river, and you can go and stop and see all of these different houses. And a lot of them have museums. They'll give tours of the home. Some of them have restaurants. Some of them are turned into like bed and breakfast, so you can spend the night. But
Wow.
that's like a whole different style of architecture, and those are varied in style too.
And it's called Antebellum,
Antebellum.
like
Mhm.
the group Lady Antebellum. Is that where that
Yes,
comes?
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
interesting. Oh, okay.
yeah.
So I'm curious because I noticed that the older homes specifically, what's the name in there in New Orleans? Is it Garden District? The Garden District, like
Mhm.
where they have the really amazing, beautiful mansions that are like, I don't know,
Yes.
over 100 years old, maybe 200 years old now.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the construction was made of wood, right? Is that still quite common to this day, would you say, when they build new homes? I wouldn't think so, right?
So It depends.
Mhm,
There's a lot of new construction neighborhoods going up in our area,
mhm,
and they're brick. The majority of them are brick. You might see some vinyl siding on the back, you might see some stucco on the front, maybe
mhm,
some hardy planks, so there'll be a little bit of that.
mhm,
Um, and then there are some neighborhoods that are built along the modern farmhouse
mhm,
style, where you may see more wood on those.
hmm,
But in New Orleans, there's not a lot of new construction neighborhoods going up.
right.
There's not a lot of land available in New Orleans. So what you're seeing some of is like they're like in some of these neighborhoods, there's houses in these neighborhoods that are like really old. People are buying the house,
Mhm.
tearing the whole house down, and then building like a really, you know,
Oh,
much bigger and nicer home. But generally those going up are brick. They're
uh-huh.
not wood. Mm-mm.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Actually working on a sale right now for a house that is in Old Algiers, so
Mm,
which is on the West Bank. So we have the East Bank and the West Bank, depending on what side of the river you're on.
mhm.
And those they built, it's called the Maritimes at Algiers. So they built 20 houses in there, and those are all wood siding. And they are built very much in the traditional style of homes in New Orleans,
Mm,
the way they were built, historically. They're beautiful. But yet, I think unless it's like a kind of a special thing,
mhm.
I don't think you see that as much.
I see.
Yeah, not
And
anymore.
it sounds like homes like that might be protected where you're not allowed, definitely in the French Quarter, I saw that, right? Like in the bars you go in and there's a lot of regulations as to being able to do anything. I wonder it's the same, you see that a lot in terms of protected homes if they're much older. Yeah,
So
or
like maintaining the historical
right.
integrity of the property, yes, and
Exactly.
you do see that in New Orleans a lot.
Mm,
So there's a historical society, I forget the name of the exact organization, but yeah, they dictate like what you can and cannot do with property that is considered like a historic property.
mm.
Yes, there's definitely restrictions around that.
What I understood there, yeah, it's heavily regulated. Something as
Yeah.
simple um as like I want to say putting up a security camera, or something like this. Like you really have to go through hoops to get it approved, or something like that.
Yeah.
So, and it makes
Yeah, in
sense.
the
They want to
quarter,
protect.
I could see that being the case for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. I don't know the name. Let me see. I'm blanking on the name. The space underneath a house, which I saw a lot of that in New Orleans. You know what that's called? The
The
crawl
crawl
space.
space.
Crawl space. Yeah, it just suddenly came to mind. Is that a very common thing now with the modern developments as well, or is that more of like an old style?
So I think it's an old style, although they do still build houses with crawl spaces.
Mm,
So I don't know if you realize this, if you didn't get out of New Orleans, you probably didn't see this.
yeah.
So houses, because of the flooding and
Mhm.
the flood zones that we have, a
Mhm.
lot of houses have to be built up off the ground.
Ah,
So, so next time you come back to Louisiana, we'll have
yeah.
to get out and ride by some of these, but you'll see houses that are built up on piers that are 10 feet off the ground.
Whoa, I do see that from time to time in South Florida, and I always thought it had to do with flooding. And then here in Seattle, we don't get as much heavy rain, I don't think. However, it's just always damp and moist. And so there's this thing where homes, if they have a basement, they typically are prone to leaking. And so I would imagine basements aren't a thing in Louisiana, or at least in that area of Louisiana, right? I don't think people have basements.
No,
No,
we
that
don't.
probably wouldn't be
No.
very smart.
No, because of the water table. So if you had a
Yeah.
basement here, it 99.9%
Mm,
sure it would probably leak,
yeah.
And if
Yeah.
it didn't leak, it would fill up with water when we got a
Oh, okay.
monsoon here.
Oh my gosh.
So, and
Wow.
one thing I don't know if people think about, if you're like, so let's say you were relocating here to Louisiana and
Mm-hmm.
you're coming from an area where you have basements.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe you use that for storage. So you have to think about that when you come here, you're losing all that square footage. And then we have attics here too, but it's so hot in an attic,
Right.
you can't always store things up there. And then
Right.
they're not always decked, where you have that option either. So just something to think about. You
Definitely.
have to
So
plan for storage or get rid of some of your things.
get rid of some of your things, or
Yeah.
potentially fill up a garage, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. or rent out a storage space.
I know it does seem like we have a lot of people who have garages, but they park outside of them. So the garage becomes, some functional
Right.
gathering place or a storage facility.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for this inside look. And was there anything else that you wanted to add about what you like about living in that part of Louisiana?
There's so many things that I
So
like
many
about living
things.
here, to be honest. I mean, I some people complain about the weather. I don't mind the weather. I like the weather. I like that it's hot and not cold and freezing all year long, like
Right.
you guys get.
Yes.
The majority of the year is cold. I'm definitely not a cold natured person, but just I love living here. The culture, the music, the food, the nature is something that I love so much about Louisiana. We have such beautiful nature here. If you ever come back, or when you come back,
Yeah.
do a swamp tour.
Ooh, a
That's
swamp
so
tour.
Yeah, get out into the swamps, and where you can see some of our native birds, and an alligator or two, snakes, things like that. And it's so peaceful out there.
And so in the winter, how cold does it get? Like around Christmas time? And
Sometimes at Christmas we're in shorts.
really?
Yeah, I mean, I can remember as a kid, all the kids running around outside at my grandma's house in shorts,
Oh my
because it
gosh.
gets that hot. So
Huh.
we don't have it's not cold like it is in other places from, say, December to February, or November to February. That's our cold time, just like anybody else. But we have intermittent cold days. So we might have a day where it's 32 degrees, or like here recently, we got down to 28 and there was a hard freeze warning, but it lasts a day, maybe two. Sometimes it lasts just a few hours. And then, you could be 30 degrees in the morning and 75 degrees in the afternoon.
Wow.
Yeah.
And in
So
the summer, it gets to the hundreds, I would say.
no,
No.
not that bad.
Okay.
I don't, I'm trying to think if I ever remember it getting to 100 here. I don't think so. We'll
Okay.
get into the 90s.
Into
Yeah.
the 90s.
Yeah, the low
It's just
90s.
humid, right? So the air is quite thick, or what do you call it? Dense, right? That might be why it feels so hot.
Yeah. And again, I'm probably not the right person to ask about humidity, because it does not bother me whatsoever.
Oh, really?
Like, I
See, my
hear
hair
people
goes like
complain.
this.
Yes, people complain about it all the time, and they're like, "Oh, it's so humid."
Ah,
It just doesn't phase me that way. Not in that
wow.
way. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Lucky you, because my hair notices it first.
Gotcha.
Gotta tame it down,
Yeah,
so.
well, this is like straight as nails, so
Oh, okay.
humidity doesn't do much for it.
Yeah. Yeah, my hair will get very wavy and curly and frizzy, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. So have a great weekend, and
Thank you.
we'll chat again soon.
Okay, sounds good. Take care.
All right, guys, I hope you liked this week's video. If you have any questions, drop a note in the comments. If you had a follow-up thought about what we talked about today, or you'd like to connect with Andrea, let me know down there in the comments. And if this video was enjoyable for you, hit that like button. And if it's your first time to this channel and you like the idea of getting real estate tips, tricks, whether it's buying, selling, investing, whether in Seattle, Miami, or another marketplace, then consider subscribing. Until next time, my friends, catch you later.
You're like a circle that floats around.